Okay. First,
Okay.
this is to go around the room and introduce one another. So
Um,
introduce ourselves.
Can I chime in here for a second? We need to call the meeting to order again with the date and time.
At 6:01, I'm calling the meeting to order.
Thank you.
All right. So
All right, Darren Wise, staff liaison.
Christina Fadenrack, advisory member.
Vicki Olson.
Shannon Knight, vice chair.
Tanner Woody, member.
Bob McCarthy, chair.
And
And we had a member here.
We got Owen here too.
Oh,
And
whoa.
Owen.
Oh.
You have to say your name. You're muted.
Owen Zentel, CCI member.
Thank you.
Christine Duck.
My next,
Yeah.
Chris Myers, city staff planner.
Okay. To that. Is there anyone who'd like to give a public comment?
We do not have anyone signed up.
We do not. In that case, let's take a look at the minutes and when ready, I'd appreciate.
Oh, I have a couple corrections.
Good.
I wasn't here, but it doesn't say I wasn't. I think I think I'm here on number 3. No, yes, I approve something.
Yep.
Where is that? Because I don't see it.
That is on, it says 1, 2, 3 approval of meeting notes, and it has my name there. And then somewhere else, oh, in number 5, my last name is misspelled. Olson.
Okay. So, Lynn, do you make those corrections? Or do we?
Lynn makes them, so you can just make a motion. But approve the minutes with the corrections noted by.
Hello, Counselor. So I would look for a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second,
Second.
discussion. All in favor? Thank you. With that.
I want to recognize Councilor Baumgartner.
I did. Counselor, I said it. Counselor,
Good evening.
thanks for being here.
You all.
So the discussion is on Highway 43 Community Vision Plan Working Group. But I think I'd like to, before we start there, I'd like to start with the approval by the council of our bylaws. And we had a conversation about that there. We were going to talk about that ahead of time.
Yeah, if you want to amend the agenda, I guess you can do that.
Acceptable?
Is there a reason you want to put it first? Only because you're making staff state.
Oh, no,
Staff
that-
doesn't have to
no.
be here.
In that case,
I honestly,
in that case, Chris, please go ahead.
I do not mind at one bit if you would prefer that. It's obviously.
No, that's fine. I think there's some implications to us and the work we do once we talk about the bylaws that have been changed. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So my name is Chris Myers, for those of you who I haven't met, and I'm one of the city planners here at West Linn. I'm the project manager on a new project that we have recently approved. So tonight, we're going to discuss the working group. But before that, I feel like it would be wise to maybe give a 5 or so minute brief on what the project is. That sound
Yeah, 'cause you have some new people.
exactly? Yeah, there are a couple of you in this room who have heard this already, or at least a portion of it. So my apologies for hearing the same thing over and over. So let's back up. So Highway 43 Land Use and Neighborhood Connectivity Plan. That's the overall project, right? We're going to be reviewing the Highway 43 corridor from Lake Oswego to I-205, which is about a 3.3 mile stretch of West Linn. We don't really have an east-west border. That'll kind of be determined as we go along, and it may flex as we move through the corridor. Now, the goal here is to actually create a new vision for Highway 43. We're looking for things that were facilities to provide safe crossings, to provide pedestrian access to places on Highway 43, cycling access, transit rider access, enabling commercial services that will provide for the neighborhood and the needs of people in that corridor, as well as throughout the community. We are looking to ensure that we can try to connect neighborhoods via pedestrian access ways along Highway 43 that are adjacent to Highway 43. Primarily, we have three overarching goals for the project. To evaluate the land uses that are adjacent to the corridor. That's kind of step one, right? What do we have? Again, that's 3.3 miles in length. Coming up with recommended zoning changes as well as amended code language and potentially some design standards for Highway 43. Highway itself, sorry, for the adjacent infrastructure. We don't own the highway, so we have limited ability to those changes. Evaluating pedestrian and bicycle connections so that we have safe access to and from the corridor and throughout the corridor. And then also to develop a mixed-use zoning code, and that will be up to our consultant, which I'll talk about here in a second. So a mixed-use zoning code chapter for the West Linn Community Development Code. Right now, we have a mixed-use chapter, but it's geographically bounded. Essentially, the Willamette neighborhood, the sort of the Main Street area, as we kind of refer to it around City Hall. So it's bounded to a geographic space, and we like the consultant to write one that can be used anywhere throughout the city where it was determined it's needed. So those were the three overarching goals that we have.
So if you decide to make mixed use, like we talked about, by the market, Sunset Market, it would apply to that area too, because of the land use code, or is it gonna be boundary to 43?
No, we would like a mixed use code that would be flexible to be used wherever the community and council determined that it would fit. So just like any other code we have in the city, right? And you start geographically sort of constraining where a code can be, it starts to lose its purpose over time. So we want it to have the flexibility to be placed wherever those who determine it needs to be used do so.
Hey, Chris, can you define mixed use code?
In mixed use, you're generally, and I'll speak in broad terms, you're generally looking at the ability to have flexibility in your code. As an example, general commercial, right down in your neck of the woods right now. You're constrained to what you can do in the general commercial code, where mixed use would allow you to do some sort of retail living type situations where the general commercial doesn't allow that. It would allow different and flexible uses of parking, where it could go, where you would put it. So those are the general concepts: living, retail, commercial uses with residential uses combined.
Most common you see is the first floor commercial space with resident apartments or condominiums above.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the Weiser block in downtown Lake Oswego, it's a good example.
Yeah. It's the most local and the best example of that, how those Weiser blocks have built up a little bit.
So it's, if I understand this, so it's both commercial and residential together?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mixed use.
Yeah, or either or. So if it was like a single story building, it could be used for commercial or it could be used for residential. It gives flexibility to use it different ways.
I'm thinking the implications of that. So in an existing residential area, are you imagining mixed use zoning going in, so then commercial would be allowed in that?
No, I'm not imagining anything, to be honest.
Well, I'm just wondering what the implications are.
Yeah, but yes, so the mixed use code that we have for the Willamette area, it's basically made so it's a buffer, it's soft commercial buffer to the residents. So the things that we allowed when we had a working group that changed that code to allow for different uses. It's all like office, like low traffic stuff. So you couldn't put like a restaurant in. the mixed use zone down there. It's gotta be something that's quieter and less,
So you
traffic.
could have a tenant hypothetically, I'm just saying, like your type of business.
Like my business is
Would fit
is an
that,
odd, yeah. So, right, so it's not affecting the neighbors that are immediately next to it so bad with noise and parking and all that kind of stuff, but it allows it to be used that way instead of being, I don't know what this code's gonna be, but I'm giving you the example of what we did with the mixed use code in the lab.
So let me throw a couple things out there. Number one, I think Shannon hit on one of the key words, which is flexibility. It offers flexibility for developers or property owners to maybe do something at a higher and greater use for their property than they could currently do today. The other part of that is that, oh, I totally lost my second item. Darn it. Okay. So let me move through at least this and we'll talk about the working group because we're not actually recommending one right now. That's part of the larger discussion. Okay. So let me roll through this. So we've gone through the request for proposal process. We did end up offering the contract to MIG. They've accepted. We've signed the contracts. Council signed the council authorized city manager to sign. So everyone signed and we started about a week ago. The project is going to take more or less 24 months. Let me talk about the largest component of the project, and that's simply the public engagement plan. So what this project or this plan ultimately is, it's what the community's vision for Highway 43 is going to be. So we're a ways away from even getting towards something like a mixed use code because we don't actually know what the community wants that to look like. So that's a large part of this process. So MIG in the budget, the total overall budget is $200,000 for our consultant contract. The total consultant budget is $200,000. And that'll be spent out over about 24 months. So MIG will be performing a few public engagement events, a kickoff event, and a few other pieces that I'll talk about in a minute. And then from the staff perspective, I've committed both speaking to council and a lot of my planning to doing somewhere around 30 public engagement events, both myself and other staff that I can sort of corral into helping me out do these things. So the goal is to be out in the community, asking what the community would like to see on Highway 43 in as many places as we can possibly go. So some of my current list, I'll just run through these. We don't have to go too deep, but we're going to be doing some walk and talk tours where we'll walk certain sections of the Highway 43 with people who sign up on our project webpage. Probably up to 10 people. We'll pick a half mile or mile stretch and walk up and down and discuss it and talk about what the community wants to see, not what I want to see. Well, one of the ideas I love a lot, Darren came up with this, is living room meetings. We want to do up to about 4 living room meetings where maybe 10 people sign up, a community member hosts this group, and we come in and we just sit down in someone's living room and talk about what they want to see on Highway 43. I've got 4 of those kind of mapped out. It may be more, it may be less. Maybe people aren't interested in doing that. I don't know. Cookies and coffee at the library. Our first event is November 12th, and we'll be there from I think 12 to 3, handing out coffee and cookies and just asking people to come chat with us about what they like or dislike about Highway 43. We have a couple talking points, and we have the website going live here in a little bit, an upgraded version of the web.
Will you do some evening ones too?
Yeah, we're going to spread them around. We're starting sort of softly and gently. MIG is going to come out and train a few of us on how. I haven't done intercept surveys for an embarrassingly long time. So MIG is going to come out and work with us on how to approach people. What's the best way to speak to people? So we're starting gentle with an afternoon on a Sunday at the library. But we'll be doing evenings, Saturdays, Sundays, mornings, evenings. We'll mix it up. The library is a really easy one for us because it's a city property. We don't really need permission. We've already talked to Doug about it at the library. So we can they have all the equipment we need. We can use the Wi-Fi. So it's an easier one for us to do and a good place to start.
Can I also clarify, because I'm catching up here, and I'm excited to hear more about the engagement part, but we're talking beyond, so you said LO to 20, Lake Oswego to 205, so that's beyond the old information of Merrillhurst to Cedar Oak. Like it is outside that, or is that all ODOT? For Highway 43? Merrillhurst Drive to Cedar Oak,
Neighborhoods are.
Drive, those intersections. I was thinking that it was,
So this is the full 43 corridor
Okay.
within the city boundaries of West Linn.
So
So stopping at
so
205.
If I may, so I think this is one of the things that we need to get our
yeah,
message.
and when I'm thinking stakeholders, like who are we talking
Yeah,
about?
so there's the Highway 43 concept plan, which is what does Highway 43 ultimately look like?
Uh-huh.
The physical structure itself, yeah.
Okay,
So this is to piggyback on that, looking at uses along the corridor
okay,
and then how you get from the neighborhood to
okay.
Highway 43. So if the city and ODOT and everybody spends millions of dollars to improve Highway 43, then what uses, but like the city residents like to see adjacent to it? And then how, if you live a mile away from there, how do you safely walk or bike there without having to get in your car to do that?
Okay,
So they're linked, but this is a separate project.
okay.
Yeah, and Counselor Baumgartner just brought up a point. You might also be thinking of the possible project where we were going to move Hidden Springs across 43 around the church
Yeah,
to Cedar Oak, which I believe at this time has been shelved as a project. But that's not a part of this project, again, to Derek's point. We're really looking at how you get there and what you do when you're there. That project was the physical structure of Highway 43 and what that's going to do. Now, I think as we go through, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just while we're on to clarify a couple things. One, MIG is only referenced in here as the project consultant.
They are.
Yeah, but like what's MIG? Is it Mother's Increased Goose? I don't know what it means.
So the firm name is MIG Incorporated.
Is that-
And I don't believe they have a full name other than MIG.
Yeah, it's three, the three people that created the firm, but I don't remember what they are.
But they don't
just
use the
call
names.
themselves.
It's just like UPS is no longer United Parcel Service, it's changed. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
it's MIG Incorporated. So that's
Okay.
what they go by.
MIG. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I just like to look at that kind of stuff and get familiar. Thank you. The other one is just on the scope of breadth. For the 43, we would be going to the Arch Bridge.
We're going to be stopping at I-205.
Okay, on the roundabout side before the roundabout?
No,
Like the gas
it's
station?
essentially the north facade of the I-205 overpass.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of where that would end. That's about where the ingress egress is for the freeway. And then the waterfront plan, which John Floyd is working on, goes right up to the roundabout. So it's basically the two projects are in hell.
is the whole idea to keep them separate?
Yeah, they're two separate projects.
Yeah, but I mean, so this would be the 43, would this involve maybe the 43 coalition?
The business coalition?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm working closely with Alina on getting feedback and communicating and working with the coalition, the folks that are on the coalition, yes.
Okay, I know I'm definitely going on the tangent here and we're engaged in it, and so I'm not talking about that yet, but I'm just wondering why we wouldn't include the waterfront idea or even like the states or galaxy. So I think everything, right?
Or Space Age, the gas
Space
station.
age, yeah. Like up to there and even up to the preschool side of things, because, and right in that same vicinity.
So as members of the community, they're 1000% welcome to engage in the process, but we do
Yeah.
have to draw a boundary at some point, and overlapping the projects gets a little bit muddy on how that's going to work. So we just, the boundaries 205 to Lake Oswego. But they'll be we're more than happy to engage them in that process. I think their bigger concerns, and I don't know this to be true, it's just my personal feeling, is what will affect their businesses most is the waterfront project.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's probably where they would want to engage most is, what are you doing changing next to my business? What's changing next to my business?
Yeah, and if there's gonna be some kind of, what did you call it? Some kind of code, you know, for the building styles and everything else. And
Yep.
what's allowed, having that line with. I'm just wondering what that would look like, you know, would it be like hard, like, you know, here's my yellow and now here's my red, you know, like, I see this very distinct difference as a.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're getting there is the transportation infrastructure. You're getting the roundabout, the freeway, the overpass itself, the ingress egress from the freeways. There's not a lot of businesses in that space between the projects. Then you jump over south of the roundabout and you get some apartments and Territorial Drive and you get some residential down there. So everyone will be covered in one format or another. So there's kind of a hard line.
Yeah,
So, but again, some of this stuff is also just being sussed out right now. Like,
Mhm.
again, we don't have an east-west boundary on the project. We're going to be analyzing connections and infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists through the corridor. And in some cases, that might be a quarter mile off, and in some cases, it might be a lot closer.
yeah,
So it's a lot of undetermined. I mean, we're literally starting week 2 of a 24-month project. So the first thing we want to do, and that's kind of the message tonight, is we are getting out into the community to ask, what does the community want? Let's start with what your long-term vision as a community is. And then we'll start kind of sussing out some of that information. Does that make sense?
Oh,
I'm not trying to not answer,
no.
but I will say, we don't have all the answers.
Yeah, and I don't want to like, you know, try that much, you know, I've got a, you know, secret agenda. I am, you know, in 40 years, I'm overlooking the locks.
Right.
After I do a whole bike circuit
Right.
around West Linn.
Right.
You know, like that's my secret agenda.
Yep.
And so I'm just wondering what this will look like at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately what we're trying to do is make Highway 43, if this is what the community wants, a place for people to go and to activate those spaces and to involve themselves down there without necessarily having to drive, and having goods and services that people want and places that people could actually live. One of the big parts that we're doing is engaging with the youth. Been to the Youth Advisory Council twice. They're going to continue to work with this project through graduation in, what's that, June? And I'm also will be visiting the high school on Tuesday to meet with the civics and government instructor, teacher, and we're going to work on engaging his classes, presenting to those classes, and seeing if there's an avenue or a project they can work on. Not necessarily as part of the project, but sort of side by side. They do these kind of planning projects in those classes, and I'm hoping that we can use Highway 43 corridor as one of their projects. So my point is, in 40 years from now, I probably won't be here, but in 40 years from now, those 16-year-olds in high school will be, and we want them to be able to come back and have places to live and be.
Yeah.
And so that's ultimately one of the goals. But at the end of the day, we want to hear what the community wants us to do.
Yeah.
And that's again, I'll just run through some of these where we're going to be. Another option is, or another thing that we have, I'm going to be inviting, you haven't heard this one yet, Counselor, I'm going to be inviting counselors on a walk and talk tour of Highway 43, not the whole stretch. That's a fair chunk for everyone to walk. But we also want to do a council tour, a meeting on Highway 43. We're looking at intercept surveys at places like Safeway and Market of Choice, where we're asking and talking to community members. Attending events, football games, basketball games, choir concerts, movies in the park, concerts in the park, anywhere where we get large volumes of our community, we want to be there. And we're working on being very active instead of passive. We will still have a website. We will still have surveys that people can fill out, and an email that will send out interested parties, will send out information. Here's where we're at on our, the normal planning stuff, but we really want to take it back out to the community. So that's really where my part of this project comes in. Aside from managing it all, is getting ourselves out into the community, hearing what everyone wants us to do.
And it seems to me that I'm looking at our role here, which is, on the one hand, I see to appoint working groups. The other is to provide input on a working group.
Yeah, so essentially how this will work, Chair, is I'm coming to you tonight. We have we were here about a year ago, and then the project, we went out for an RFP and we didn't get anyone to buy it. And we were told there wasn't enough money. So council appointed an extra 75 or another $75,000 to make it a $200,000 project. So, so this looks a little bit different than what the CCI approved a year ago. So we're coming back with a slightly different concept on what we want the working group to look like. And what we're really shooting for is a balance of community members. Now, on what we're recommending, and the CCI will approve, edit, and approve or whatnot this format tonight. And then I'll fill it in with individuals and bring that back to you in a month for approval. That's the process.
Do you have what we approved the last time?
Not on me, no. I can tell you it had representatives from each of the neighborhood associations. And I believe you had added 2 community members to make it 4. And now we kind of ballooned that quite a bit. So I've added a youth advisory council member. We still have 3 community members, 3 property owners, 3 adjacent business owners, tribal representation, a planning commission member, and a city council. That's where we would like to go with that. In presenting to council a week and a half ago, probably, it seemed to be, and to the other groups I've presented to and I haven't even gone through all of the engagement that we'd like to do as staff, that we're really looking, the goal is to find people who maybe haven't had their voice heard in West Linn, and we're kind of trying to get out and find people to fill in some of these spots and see what they have to say.
I have a comment. So sometimes when you do that, you have, it's hard for people, the attendance tends to be an issue. So it'd be nice to maybe get in, it's hard.
Has to be asynchronous. You know, has
But
to,
how you feel this with people who are going to show up to the meeting.
I agree.
So,
What do you think, Vicky?
well, sometimes when you get someone who's like, yeah, this would be fun, and they haven't actively been involved in the community or somewhere plugged in, I think the commitment level drops exponentially.
very quickly. There's a lot of people who are what do they call armchair heroes. You know, they're sitting there at home and saying, we gotta do more, and they're not gonna show up.
Like, but can you, the neighborhood neighborhood groups that we have, maybe you talk to the chairs and they would maybe nominate or give you a list of people who they think would commit and have time to do this.
So I have a different idea. I think attendance could be an issue, and I think there could be things that exist that are preventing people from being able to participate, like childcare or having to work in the evenings, or what could an incentive be that maybe a public engagement firm could provide that would allow somebody to be present and attend monthly. I don't know what those are, what resources we have, but renters may not be part of neighborhood associations. And I think we should have some representation of people that aren't property owners or business owners. I would love to see that.
Just community members? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, from
What I'd really like is an adjacent business owner who lives in West Linn. That would be fantastic. Sort of like Shannon, although you're on the corridor, so.
Well, and the meetings,
Get
too.
Russell too.
You can do, they'll do Zoom meetings too, they'll continue.
Of course.
Yeah.
We'll have the options available to do WebEx or.
Yeah.
And I think what I would say is I don't disagree. I think that we have to look at what are all the barriers to having people come and commit. And I also think that just because someone hasn't worked on a city project or committed to a community advisory group prior, shouldn't keep them from getting to do one. And I'll tell you what, I know that we all have challenges meeting all the meetings. We need to go to our volunteer meetings, and I'm guessing that everyone's missed a meeting here and there, and it happens. We're talking about probably 5 to 6 meetings over the
Not
course.
years.
Nope, 5 to 6 meetings over the course of probably the next 15 months, somewhere in there. I'd like to have the list to you next month so that we can start either December or January. We don't want to be too deep into the public engagement before we've actually had the meet and discuss and give us feedback and that kind of thing. So I get what you're saying. I think we have to break down some of our preconceived notions and go out and ask people, could you meet that? Could you commit to that? Could you make those meetings? And what are those barriers? And if it's simply, I would need to be virtual because I have kids at home, great, problem solved. We can do that. Is it daycare? We'll figure that out. Sure.
I was taken with your ideas about gathering information.
Oh, I haven't even given them all.
I-
I'll send them to you.
They seem very practical to me.
Yeah.
Walking tour. A living room meeting.
Yep.
Made a lot of sense to me. Cooking coffee at the library, where you really get to sit down with people
Talk to us.
and you ask them and you listen to them and you gather the information. It seems very valuable. But I'm not sure about how you take this personal information, these perspectives, and they become part of a working group. And so there seems to be, there'll be a distance here, unless the working group is a part of that gathering. That we should get. So that seems to me to be, I'm not sure about how that works. That seems a disconnect.
So your disconnect, I just want to make sure I got that right, is you think people on the working group should be out helping us gather the information so that there is a clean line between the two.
And so they are really impacted by what they hear.
Oh, attending the meetings and sending the copies.
Yes, as opposed to meeting to say, Chris, and giving them the information and now they're gonna make a decision.
And then there's more presentation of those
Yes.
community facts that we, just hear from the
Right.
Yeah.
armchair side of things.
So what I would say is
Community.
I'm open to the idea. I've
Okay.
mentioned it at EDC. Anyone who wants to help, just let me know. I don't think we want to make that mandatory. Otherwise you will have a problem getting people to the working group because that commitment is massive. I mean, my commitment alone is huge. Yeah, it would be, please, if you want to come hang out, not hang out, but you can't come spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours with us at the library, or if you want to be a part of a walking tour, sorry.
No,
walking
you're
tour
fine.
group. If you want to be a part of a walking tour, please join us. That would be fantastic, but not required. Because you're talking about, I mean, there are hundreds of hours right there. And if we're worried about
No doubt about
if
that.
we're worried about 2 hours or an hour and a half meeting 6 times, how are we ever going to get to spending hundreds and hundreds of someone's hours, right? So I think it's great to have them invited and please join. You were at EDC a week ago. I believe I offered that up. Please help me out. Come hand out flyers, come intercept survey, come hang out at the library. I think that's great.
I think it's, my sense is there is a sufficient disconnect between gathering this useful data, these perspectives, and a group who's then going to somehow take that perspective and come up with recommendations for zone changes. And the like. It
Yes.
just, it seems to me to be a sufficient amount of disconnect I'm uncomfortable with.
Yeah, so that's my biggest issue with it is that usually the reason we appointed the CAGs to them is that they're at least expressing more of a community voice. My concern I had when we did this with the working group for the Willamette area, when we had some property owners, is there's a bias because the property owners are going to want to do what's going to be the best for their property, which may conflict with what members of the community want, right? Because it's going to increase their property values or whatever. So there's that aspect to it. So I was just going to say, if we maybe had a member, did we have a member? That's why I wondered if we had a member of CCI on it before, so that at least you have a member who is hopefully looking out for the interests of the community at large and not the personal interests of people that are right there. Maybe I'll share you.
So one other, a piece of what we've budgeted for are 10 sessions, listening sessions, to be spread between the Robinwood Neighborhood Association, the Bolton Neighborhood Association, and the NAPs. With MIT. So we budgeted as part of the scope of the project 10 listening sessions with Robinwood, Bolton, and NAPs to be spread, 10 to be spread through those three groups.
NAPs.
Yeah, but those are,
Neighbor-
so, but
neighborhood
the problem is
association
that
group.
that's what we want to make sure is that information, like I'm great with the information gathering, as long as that information gathering is used to make a decision. And that's what, how do you know if there are people who are biased are going to use that information to make a decision, community versus their own?
I think, that's.
Can't that be said for any group?
Can be said for any group, but at least hopefully if you're with the CAG members in there representing what their, the group think is and not necessarily someone who has a financial interest in these. That's my only concern.
You know, it may be a way to rewrite the purpose of this working group. Something to the effect.
Well, I think the purpose is fine.
The purpose is actually in our each CAG's.
Well, it says a forum to discuss different points of view.
Yep, that is written into our, it's not our code, it's into our charter for the CAG. It's the
As
community
opposed
development code.
to,
It is a CDC.
as
Is that where I
to,
pulled that
as
from?
opposed to understand and incorporate community perspectives gathered through the involvement. I want these folks, if they're going to sit down and discuss what the plan should be, that they are reflecting what your process will produce, which is, I think, a terrific process. So I want to find some way that that information guides their thinking.
So let me see if I can help this conversation. So the role of the working group is to, Chris and the consultant team are going to collect all of the information. It's, get it down into a usable form, bring it to the working group. The working group will provide feedback on it, suggest, changes or no changes. That will get refined, and then the next batch of information will come to the working group. And they're really a sounding board for the consultant team, right? What have we heard from the community? This is what we heard. This is what we proposed. Working group will say, yeah, we like that, we don't. Same time, Chris and the consultant team will be going to neighborhood associations, going to EC, giving council updates, giving the planning commission updates. So
I get the process. Dave.
yeah, right. So
So what I don't get is the emotional connection. The emotional connection is when you sit down in someone's living room and people talk about what they do. There is that part that is more than just the rational data. It's something more personal.
When we're looking at the people, similar to the TIP working group, we were kind of given a list of, the names at the end of it that we looked over. I think that might meet some of the concerns here about, like, instead of this community member,
or so all right. So
it could be
So
screwed
you-
up, you know?
you read the first page, right? We're here tonight to say, does this group, do these groups and organizations and individuals look like a good mix of people in your working group? If you say yes, or you say you want something from the CCI, or you want the neighborhood, we'll put those on here. And then Chris, over the next month, will contact folks to see if they can commit to it. And then we'll come back next month or in December with the actual list of names. CCI will say, this is the list of names. And then we take it to council. Council actually appoints them, right? You're making a recommendation on who should be appointed. Council appoints them.
Would that meet some of the, or like help calm some of the concerns?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
like I said, I only think that maybe you have one or two more CAGs on there so that you have an independent voice of. Because these look like all people who are going to be
Yeah, I'm not
interested.
necessarily, I mean,
That's fine.
say bluntly, I think there could be changes to some of these
Yeah.
as well.
Now's the time,
Okay,
right now.
right now,
Let me highlight though, it's Tanner, right?
yes.
Let me highlight this. This is your first CAG? Oh, you've been on CAGs before?
Yes.
Okay. So before that first CAG, because you had never been on one, should you have not been given consideration?
What?
So I'm just saying, people who have not engaged in community advisory groups previously
Yeah.
should still be given the same level
Oh.
of consideration as someone
Yeah.
who has been on 3. I'll also say I'm going to EDC, SAB, CCI, all TAB,
Yeah.
everyone but the audit and budget committee are getting regular updates such as this by me. So that piece is still there,
Yeah.
whether they're on a working group or not. You guys can guide that however you want. I just want to be really clear about that.
They're voting, my problem is they're voting on what actually kind of gets sent to council when they have an interest. So that's why I just want to make sure there's voices that are, it's not all forum of voices who are financially interested in the,
Yeah.
So what do you think of?
that's what I mean.
What do
I
you
would
think
love
of
to
this
see-
list that's been posed that we would ask Chris to go and see if he can get folks who fit these categories?
Well, the other benefit when we have CAGs on there is that they can, with the quorum issues, have a backup, you know, like if one person can't make it, someone else from the group can make it as a alternate kind of a thing, which you won't have with just standard community members.
Would
So
you define, what is the CAG?
community advisory groups, so like this.
That's-
Oh.
So
Yeah.
I would say the only one I would change is add a member of CCI, so that way you have someone on there that's making sure the voice of the rest of the city is being heard.
Okay, so you would want a CCI member.
That
Vicky,
would be my only recommendation.
I would go back to.
Just a second.
to-
What's your sense, Vicky?
Yeah, like this, see, community, one of, somebody from our group, or one of the other committees too.
So just one CAG, one more CAG.
Such as, you have a suggestion?
Well, I would just say CCI, so that we make sure that
So,
whatever, you know, the community is bringing, or that the staff brings back from the community is actually being discussed and not just not listened to. Does that make sense?
What was the other committee that you were, should be involved?
I think that's the only one I would change.
Like one?
I just would have CCI on here instead of one of these.
so I will
Vicky, just
say,
second.
Probably.
We'll go around the table here.
Because that's financial.
Vicky, what's your sense?
I agree with the committee involvement, someone from our committee.
Yes, it's still
And the neighborhood, we don't have any neighborhood people, do we?
Right, the NAs, right now, we're budgeted to have those 10 listening sessions with the neighborhood associations. They're actually gonna get their own meetings
Okay.
where they're gonna get, right now I have it as 4 for Robinwood, 4 for Bolton, and 2 for the NAP, the Neighborhood Association Presidents Group, where they will literally get their own meetings
But
to
they,
have those discussions.
they don't get to be on this working group and vote.
So if you want them on there, we can do that.
Well, is that, what do you think? Do we need, I don't. No.
Do the other neighborhoods like Sunset, Rosemont?
Owen, please.
What about the other neighborhoods like Hidden Springs, Rosemont, and Sunset?
So that's a good question. Right now, we have 2 sessions with the Neighborhood Association Presidents Group, the NAPs. So we are in part hoping that the presidents will go back to their neighborhood associations and fill in their congregations, the wrong word, their community, their neighborhood community about what's talked about and bring back questions and concerns. I can also go out to all the neighborhood associations. Not all of them meet regularly, but that's certainly on the books. So that's something that's one of the ideas on the chart.
Christine, what's your thought? What are your thoughts?
I feel like it is more stacked than I'm comfortable with business owners and property owners that have that financial interest and maybe they are interested in the livability and vibrancy of that corridor, but it just feels stacked with owners. I do like the idea of having CCI represented as a member here, but I also see value in like somebody from the Sustainability Advisory Board and somebody from the Planning Commission, and you can make an argument for all of the CAGs. And so maybe that could be a part of the planning for the chairs of all the CAGs or something like you're doing with the neighborhood presidents, to have that representation. So there could be more community member involvement. And I don't know if you're meeting with school district or like PG&E or PGE, but I see like opportunities there with their electric avenues and just safe connections for schools and what they already have plans in their vision.
We work closely with the school district. PGE's property is solely owned down on the waterfront, and that's part of the waterfront project.
Okay.
So we do not have them as an active member in this group. We are currently seeking out tribal representation to be on our group, as at this point, I don't think that's ever happened for the corridor. And it's a tough nut to crack right now, but we're working on it. I know John Floyd's working on it, and I'm sort of piggybacking on John's work to find some tribal representation.
Let me follow up with you.
What does that mean?
So
Hold on for a second. Christine, let me follow up.
Christina.
Christine.
Yeah. That's okay.
Just, so are you comfortable with this group, or do you think you've mentioned that it's too heavily laden property and
Yes.
business?
Yes.
So we do what changes?
I feel like more, no offense to property owners that might be subject matter experts, but I'm interested in people that have like an organization of interest that is affecting the future of this corridor that we might not be aware of with the makeup of this group that might just care about their business or their property that they own there. So like TriMet or PGE or the school district and Safe Routes. What plans do they have, like for charging up vehicles or a safe bus stop in a parking area that we may need? Like, I think there's other spaces other than all these owners.
So you would reduce the number of property owners and business owners?
Maybe
and
like take
replace them.
2 off and add. I mean, I don't know if that is a CAG.
That's okay.
Or,
It's like,
I
so
have an
who would you
interest.
replace them with?
I think it would be helpful to have TriMet if we're not already getting to speak to them through another opportunity.
So we will have a technical advisory.
Guys, let me just.
Oh. Well,
Let me
that's
just gather
helpful.
some information here.
If
I'm
we-
hearing bits and
yeah.
pieces and it's
So-
not organized, so.
So I am looking for the subject matter experts, and if we do have a technical advisory group, then I would say take 2 property owners off here and add 2 community members instead, if we do have that technical advisory group.
Thank you.
That's
Vicky?
what I would, because I don't think TriMet needs to be on this, because I think you work directly with them, the city does. But a community, we need 2 more community. people.
This is more zoning rather than the actual street. I mean, there's some street stuff, right?
Okay, let me go to Owen and then,
Let's
Owen? what's your-
I mean, I'm curious about the tribal representation. I hear that come up a lot, and I don't know enough about the history, so I'm just curious why we always put that on a pedestal of importance. I'd like to just be educated. And also does community member, if it just says community member, are you assuming that that is somebody who's not a property owner and not a business owner?
I'm not assuming anything. I'll take that in 2 parts. One, I don't know that we put tribal representation on a pedestal. I think what we're trying to do is be more inclusive than we have been in past projects here in West Linn. And I think that means we need to reach out to groups that have historically had a say and have been a part of this community that aren't right now, that aren't engaged. And I think with the falls and the waterfront, that's a big part of that project. And I have a hunch that there was some sort of tribal presence in and around the Highway 43 corridor at one time. So I think we just want to reach out and see if they'd like to engage in this process. I don't know what that means ultimately. I really don't. I'm very ill-informed on that, but I think that could be a really important part of the project. And the other part of your question, sorry, I just forgot it as I was talking.
Like community member,
Oh.
like an item, are they, well, because one says community member and Highway 43 property owner, and one just says community member. So like, is it, when she's saying, I want more people who are not property owners, would we have items that say, hey, you can be in the community, but you specifically are not allowed to own property or be a business owner?
At large, like, it would be great if there could be more renters, renters of homes. But if they happen to own a business or happen to own property, that's okay. Just open it up to 5 at large, however that makeup is.
Okay. And what's your sense of this? This is a group that we are asked to approve or asked to recommend the staff to fill.
That's right.
So let's continue the discussion.
Yes. So first of all, I'd love to just model this off of the TIF plan that we've established in the past. I think canceling around it would be a really great baseline. Yeah.
What is that? I don't-
We've talked about that. So when we were talking about
Tax increment financing.
the waterfront development project.
Oh.
So when we were talking about who is going to be representative of the community and all the inputs necessary.
So you
for
want to
that,
follow that model?
that would be great. That being said, that, we can modify it here and there. The first thing would be, I think this is our opportunity for CCI to look at the engagement, and I don't think we need to babysit and handhold the whole time. I think it would be ill-advised for one of us to sit in just for the sake of like, now we're assuming full responsibility. Anything else does come up. I would love though to see the Parks and Rec mentioned somewhere for a CAG. There's Merrillhurst, or sorry, not Merrillhurst.
There's no,
There's Parks along 43.
I am briefing them at their November meeting.
but you think that it's not severely impacting them. So this is, you gotta remember, this is all about zoning changes. So I think it's gonna be who's related to zoning.
I just see it as Hammerly. I see it related to the other parts. Mary S. Young.
But they're
which
not gonna get rezoned.
They're not, but I guess it's just looking at the input of
That would be the, on the last,
Before we disagree,
last time I
I'd just like to know your perspective on these members and who should be on the in-group.
I guess, outside of zoning, I see their input being valuable. I also see the school board being valuable. There's the Bolton primary there, and it's not too far away. Is
Cedar Oak, the high school.
Yeah, the high school. I would, obviously, if you have the youth advisory though, then, but still, I'd love to see the school board representation one way or another. For the community members, having someone specifically from Bolton and Robinwood would be appropriate. Just instead of property owners, maybe Bolton or Robinwood member.
And by that, do you mean member of the NA or just
I
someone who
think
lives in the
there
neighborhood?
they are by definition members of the NA.
They are. I'm just trying to decipher whether you mean an active member of the neighborhood association who holds office or a position, or just someone who happens to live in one of those neighborhoods. But there's certainly a difference.
Yeah, I think just having someone who maybe is appointed by the NA president. Maybe that would be the most appropriate. So if Bob appointed a Bolton representation, if I don't know who the current president of Robinwood is it?
I don't remember.
Tony.
Is it Tony? Thank you. I was thinking medieval guy. He does the medieval stuff. Yeah, it's Tony. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Tony, could appoint someone for those roles. I think that would be appropriate.
Chris, let me ask you what you hear.
What do I hear?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of different ideas, so at some point, we're just gonna kind of have to go 1 through 13 and try and fill them out.
Let me see if I can summarize in a second. What I'm hearing is, in general, members, the CCI would like members of this group who broadly represent the community interests in access to Highway 40.
Okay.
That broadly represent. In other words, they step back a little bit and something I have property I have to look after, but taking in all of this information that you've gathered, consultants, that they broadly represent and understand what they're hearing. And so some could be, for example, appointed by a neighborhood association. One thought I had about the tribal representation is, and was triggered by you, Owen, which is that it's offered to try, choose it. And if they don't accept, that you don't go looking any harder. It's simply offered. And if there's someone who's interested and wants to be a part, I'd be fine if they're a part. And if not,
Yeah, I think that's fine. The challenge, and I think Councillor Baumgartner knows far better than I do at this point, but there are at least 5 tribes. And I know there's some representation, but there's also some infighting right now. So it's a challenging thing right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm on board with what you're saying. It's finding the appropriate representation to
or
invite.
not,
Well, to invite.
invite.
We have to find the appropriate person or persons to invite before we can. And then that's the hard part.
So our work tonight was to, I'm sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Oh, just Owen.
Can I chime in?
Owen, thank you.
So there's 4, there's the city council, the planning commission, the tribal, and the youth advisory. Like there's 4 positions that are designated for a group of people. The rest are community members. So there's 8 community members. It seems to me like it's going to be really crucial who are these individuals, and I would think people that are like out in the community and talking to a lot of people and maybe have a lot of connections for whatever reason. I mean, even somebody like a grocery store clerk, like those kinds of people are going to have a lot of interactions with community members and a lot of opportunity to have conversations and hear what people are thinking about. I think that the individual that we attract to this is going to be important. And it kind of leads me to my question is are these 13 people, are they compensated? Like, how are we attracting people to want to participate in this job? It could be.
Yeah, I think that's the opposite of what we want to do. I don't think we want to compensate them at all. It's like, I don't want any of us to be compensated for our role here on the board.
But somebody who had, like, I feel like somebody who,
I am. I'm giving you my salary right now.
I feel like somebody who might be a good contributor might be busy and not really want to spend the time. And I think that there's something there,
Yeah, I think there's value to what you're saying, but I think that when we take away that option for of money, I mean, we can't have all paid positions for everything.
Well, what are we doing to attract them? How do we find the people that,
How do we get you?
huh?
How do we get you? It's like, what brings you here? Is it ice cream at the bar? Like, what's your?
I don't know that at the point of that. I don't understand. Yeah.
I mean, like, I guess, like, why are you here right now? For me, it's because, like I said, I want that bike lane that's gonna circle the whole West Linn. Gonna have my anniversary, my 50th anniversary, overlooking the locks with a laser show. That's what brings me here right now. So I'm asking, like, what brings you here? What's your alternative motive?
I just wanted to participate in the community and give a little of my time if it made any difference is really why.
Yeah, I value that a lot. I think that's really great. I think that's why I want to hear. I don't want someone that come and show up just for a paycheck for this.
I'd like to go back to our chore. The chore tonight is to make recommendations. Who should be on the board?
I still have one more, by the way, just ODOT. I just want to-
Before you do, let me remind us what the task is for this working group, which Shannon spoke to earlier. This working group is to propose zoning changes, propose code amendment, propose pedestrian and bicycle connection, infrastructure improvements. So on the one hand, they're going to have a ton of information. I think a lot of it very good. But they're going to have to boil down and then say, City Council, here are the changes, formal changes we want you to make in code and infrastructure. So on one hand, we need a group that can be informed well. And then they have this task. Does that change any of your recommendations about who should be on it?
I just went through all our CCI minutes and I could not find where we, the original group that we proposed. So, and we've done this for the waterfront too, so I don't know which ones were which, but my guess is that our original list probably included.
It's in there, Darren. It's in the current file,
Is it-
long range.
Good job, Sarah.
My guess is it would include EDC and SAB. For the, and I don't know if CCI was on there or not. And the only reason I said CCI was because we have so many community members that I just think a part of our goal is to ensure that the community voice is being heard. And so that way we can do that job of making sure that whatever the community is recommending through staff is actually listened to by the members of this group. And that's the only reason I recommend it.
So is this
I think you had the first one.
Does this include what CCI recommended to, or is this what was brought to?
I actually don't remember. No,
So
the
what
only,
is this?
That looks like it.
so the addition to that was 2 more community at large members.
Okay, yeah, so this is what we would have recommended last time, so you have
For this project?
for this exact project.
Thank you.
It's just a change in the.
Yeah, it was already.
Yeah, I think I have a tab on here too. I'd like tab.
So tab made sense.
And that's why I was like,
What did-
ODOT or tab.
To the transportation advisory plan.
Oh,
Yeah. And we probably don't want ODOT involved. I know that's like, that. I didn't want to say ODOT, and that's where I was like, but. yeah,
Well,
tab.
there's right now on the books, there will be a technical advisory committee. They won't have quite the input that the working group does. But TriMet and ODOT and the technical agencies that are in and around Highway 43 will be a part of that group, but we do not want them to be mixed with our community members because they have different priorities. TriMet's priority is buses and ridership. That's not what we're doing, but they will have a voice in that with the appropriate forum.
Yeah, the purpose of the TAC is, like, we hear from the community, consultant team puts together a proposal, the working group looks at it, TAC looks at it. If the TAC says, well, this will never work because ODOT regulations don't allow this to happen, then we say, okay, that's good information. We bring that to the working group and go, here's a proposal, but this part needs to be modified because ODOT won't allow us.
Okay.
So we keep them separate for that reason.
So we have 2 proposals here, actually. This was the original CCI recommendation regarding this working group. This is the current one. Can I hear what people think about it?
I'm looking at the language here and I still think having Parks and Rec. Nice, but I'm not gonna die on that hill.
Okay.
I like this.
I like it a lot too. 2 property, 2 business owners. I think the location of business owners is appropriate based off of the coalition. I think the Robinwood business owners versus Bolton business owners is a big difference. Bolton has the village, which is, you know, really easy to walk around in. It's pretty built up in this own thing, where I think Robinwood's been left the shadow stick for a long time. So having someone specifically for Robinwood business owner.
Well, can we do this if you wanted to have it so that there were more community members, new blood volunteers, which I totally agree with. How about if we get rid of the neighborhood associations? And just say that one of the community members has to live in the Bolton neighborhood. One of the community members has to live in the Robinwood, but not necessarily be from the board of the neighborhood association,
Right. Yeah.
right?
But Chris, there's some not full agreement, but there's some opinion that says this looks good. What's your sense about what you're hearing? And how you feel about if this were maybe with a modification to his recommendation philosophy?
Chair, I mean, it's really up to this group. My opinion isn't really
Sure it is.
relevant in that case. If you really, really want to hear my opinion, I think if we continue to do business the same way we've always done business, we will end up getting very similar results.
And what do you think is missing here?
This is exactly how we do working groups here in West Linn, and we have for a long, long time. But Darren, my boss, probably doesn't like me saying that out loud, sorry. I just think that I would like us to think a little more broadly about community members we don't hear from. And I'll tell you right there, you already know all those people except for maybe one or two.
Because EDC.
Because they're already on CAGs.
Why not Sustainability Advisory Board if you're having EDC and Transportation Advisory Board? And why have what is the value of having the chamber in addition to the property owners?
So I'm not recommending this. This is a year old.
Well, yeah,
I didn't.
and I'm fine taking the chamber off, I'm fine taking economic development.
And city council. maybe?
And
I don't
um,
think, do you think city council needs to be a part of that, to oversee it?
I think city council is important so that if they, part of them. Yeah, so that they have reference when it goes to them, so that they have someone that would in those meetings.
Oh, city council is on here. Sorry, I missed that. I totally, it went in and then it went out.
Same reason planning commission, I would, you know.
Yeah, I started. at
Planning commission is required
Yeah,
actually
so-
by the code.
Okay.
Council's not required, but we always feel
Yeah.
that it's a really good idea.
I just feel like it just, they have a reference because they were at those meetings. So I'm cool with like I said, okay, I think the use advisory is a good add on this list too. And I agree with trying to get more people involved. I would just, like I said, make sure, since you have a lot of property owners on this vested interest, that was my only concern. So if you have some people to balance the vested interests, and I'd be okay with it.
All right.
I know.
Here's what I've scratched out based on this conversation, and you can take it or leave it. So, city
Okay,
council,
we're leaving it, Betty.
yeah.
Yeah.
City council, planning commission, tribal representative, the community member, scratch the third community member, scratch a property owner, leave two property owners, scratch an adjacent business, leave two adjacent businesses, youth advisory council, CCI member, and a community member specifically for Robinwood and a community member specifically for Bolton.
I can live with that.
Right.
Well, we keep you around.
Yeah, because one of the, just so you know, Chris and I had this discussion
Numerous.
ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is make it a community project, not just a 43 project, right? So we want to try to get people engaged throughout the community because everyone uses Highway 43.
Right.
And the goal of this project is to make it a destination for.
So let's hear from some others. What's your response to?
I like,
That was good. I'm
Yeah,
100%
yeah, I like that.
I would still like us to take a step back and ask why we don't have a CCI member on the waterfront development project again. I mean, we actively, the TIF, the waterfront development project, like we actively were asked to not have a CCI member on there.
Aren't you?
You know, we had no, I'm not.
I don't think we were actively asked not to have.
When we talked about the list.
We
and-
talked about the list, but I think
It's-
because it was more balanced, and the only reason I said on this is to balance out the vested interests and CCI to make sure, CCI's goal is to make sure that the community voice, which is what's getting fed into from staff,
Mhm.
is listened to by this group. So I don't want the staff to come say, well, the community really wants this. And then they get in here and they say, well, we don't like that, even though the community likes it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to, I'm worst case scenario person. I always think of worst case scenario.
I just hate the idea that like, but now one of us is the gatekeeper. And we're,
It's not gatekeeper, you're one voice in like 10.
okay,
Maybe with the TID group that, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the boundary was specific to those property owners' tax dollars and it being invested in that area. And so CCI representation for all of Westland isn't necessarily that area. And so maybe that's why it wasn't.
Well, you've had all the other advisory groups in there.
we had all
That's
the
what
other
I'm saying.
advisory groups.
That's what I'm saying. That's the only reason I said CCI as the main advisory, but the other one, you have all the other advisory groups.
Let's take this discussion away from TIF and back to this.
I have one more recommendation though on the working group goals.
Okay.
Because I don't see,
What was it? Are we okay with?
Yeah,
I'm fine with that. Next consent.
Before we move on,
Thank you.
Aaron has tried to summarize what we've talked about. How do you feel about his recommendation?
yeah, we all said we were okay with it. Except for
Are we in
change.
agreement?
No, I just wanted to ask.
Are you in agreement?
I'm fine with it. It's-
Oh,
I
wait,
just
was
wanted-
your,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't have a big issue with it. I like, he mentioned, I think he used the word broaden your perspective and I like that. I can't think of anything to make it better, I suppose. The goal is just to get, like, we keep saying, is just to get the community's input. The list of people is just a list of people. It's who are you going to get on there is going to make all the difference.
thank you, Owen.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
And
All right,
I want
you have your recommendation now. The group. Thank you, Darren.
I have one more thing though on this.
Yeah.
So it says,
This is around the goal.
this is around the goals.
Go ahead.
So it says, it says the highway land use neighborhood connected. Did you come up with a better name yet? Highway 43 land use.
Where are you reading?
Down here working.
First line of the working group.
Okay.
Adjacent land uses adjacent to the corridor and recommending zone changes, right? So what does adjacent mean? I think one of the group goals should be to establish what the boundaries of these things are.
So what I'll say to that is part of the process will be, there will be some established boundaries, but part of that's the research and analysis of the needs for the infrastructure as well.
But so shouldn't they be reporting on that? Like, are you gonna say only on Highway 43, or is it going to be extend, maybe 2 or 3?
We didn't define how far because it's about analyzing
Right.
the infrastructure needed.
But so shouldn't they be proposing that area boundary as part of the goals? Because the goals just say propose the zoning changes, propose the amendments and so shouldn't I also be proposing?
I think it'll be part of the larger proposal is there would need to be some sort of concept boundary, yes. But I don't know what-
Question along boundaries.
What's
Sorry. I was really curious about that too, in terms of the boundary, because I mean, the street is aligned with people's properties, their personal houses and stuff like that. So like, is the expectation that we're going to recreate these zoning and those properties are going to eventually sell to like a developer and they're going to turn it into like a mixed use, like Oswego downtown? I mean, is that kind of the thought process of what's going to change over time, or am I totally out in left field?
No, you're not in left field, but that's not really the intent here. So number one, if someone's property, if the zone changes, you're not required to do anything. Keep using it as you are, enjoy it, live in it, and you'll have no idea on the map, it might change color. Yes, if you sold it, if the zone had changed, it may leave open other opportunities. But I think what we'll work on educating people on is What we hope would happen is that people hone in on certain areas where we would want to do that. It's not the entire corridor. It's not the breadth of the, a quarter mile in each direction. It's honing in on areas that we want to enhance and give people a place to live, work, and be. It's not a 3.3 mile stretch, a quarter mile wide, that we want to change everything. That's not it at all. Again, though, coming back to, we just want to hear what the community wants first. Let's start there. What do people want 43 to look like? And then we can start honing in on how we can do that. And that's where the working group comes into play. And that's where the consultant will have to do some work. But look, we're not doing renderings of anything because we don't want to put ideas in people's heads of what we think we want it to look like. As a community member, as a citizen of Linn, yeah, I have an opinion. But as a project manager, I don't have an opinion. I want to hear everything that people want to do, and then we'll build out from there. So that's why I don't know that we need to create a boundary right now. I think we need to step into the engagement process and start hearing what people want. And that'll start forming itself. I guarantee you'll start to see some patterns emerge of what people do and don't want.
I'm just thinking
Then
the final product should have.
Well, it's my job, and part of the $200,000 we're spending is to have that.
Okay.
So I don't know that it has to be a working group goal. It's actually my job to do that, to make sure we have some sort of zoning code. And yeah, it needs to have a general area that we're proposing. And that would come out of the working group council.
Okay, I was just making sure that that was going to be part of what came out of it. It's going to tell us this is the area that we think should be zoned this. This is the area that we think should be this.
Yeah. I mean, and Owen, to your point, at the end of the day, I don't see this being, and there will be some, but I doubt there will be a lot of residential properties that will get rezoned. I could be wrong, but I doubt that's really going to be the case because
There's just not that much space. It's just, I'm looking at a map. I mean, it is just, the whole thing is properties. There's not a lot of, there's areas, pockets, but there's a lot of people's front yards, backyards.
I mean, as someone who lives there, it's like, I live right off of 43. I mean, it needs a lot of TLC. It's bad.
Well, the thing is like, if you think about it, if as busy as 43 is getting and going to get in the future, do you actually want to live there? Does someone want to live on 43 in the future where you can't get in and out of your driveway, because of traffic? Or would it be better served as business use that, because I don't know, I personally wouldn't want to live on 43.
That's a great point. I mean, it's just going to get busier unless there's an intervention of some kind. I mean, I live close to it too, and it's like, man,
That's what we're doing right now.
Trying to make it better.
yeah.
Owen, did you get your concern heard?
Yeah.
I have a question for you about purpose,
Yes, sir.
because I think I heard that this is a purpose that can't be changed. Is that correct?
The purpose of the working group is inside of the community development code. It's coded.
This language?
Yes, sir. I pulled it out of chapter 98-035.
It's unfortunately narrow in my judgment.
That could be something you put on a future agenda, is to recommend a code change.
I think it would be more accurate if it was to provide a forum to understand and incorporate community perspectives gathered by an involvement process on proposed land use legislation. But that is its first task, as opposed to just to provide a forum to discuss. Okay, that's my perspective, but it's not something on our agenda. Do you have what you need? Chris?
I do. So I was just going to say, I don't know if you're having a November meeting because I'm guessing it falls right around the holiday. If you are, I'll be back with a list of names of individuals.
Well, let's just.
And if you're not, I'll be back in December to do the same thing.
It's the week after Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
It's the regular week.
Perfect.
So,
That would be That's the 28th.
Yeah, I think that's correct, Bob. Yes, the 28th, week after Thanksgiving.
By then we will have suggested. Okay, I think we'll have the meeting then.
Great. So my goal is to come back to you with a list of names to fill those spots, and you can look at that list and make adjustments, say thumbs up, yes, and I take it to council and I'm working it. So
Thank you.
appreciate the discussion and thank you for your time. Sorry it took a lot longer. than I
No,
thought. Sorry, guys.
This was an important discussion.
It is an important discussion. I completely agree with that. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Have fun.
Yeah.
let's move on to topic under number 5, discussion of council adopted CCI by.
Yeah, so the council last week,
Yeah, 16.
yes, the council last week adopted the proposed bylaws that CCI came up with. Pretty much verbatim. I don't believe there are any changes made to it.
No.
So, yeah, so the CCI is now operating under your new bylaws, so I thought it was just an opportunity, but now we're pretty much out of time, so maybe it gets put on the next agenda, but just thought it would be a good idea to discuss what that means for the group.
Yeah.
What your goal is moving forward. And one thing to consider is council has each community advisory group within CCI do an annual report. So we'll be discussing the annual report at the next meeting. And then in December, if we have a meeting, so that might be a good forum to discuss the new bylaws, what you propose as your goals for the next calendar year. And that gets reported out to council, and then council uses that when they set their goal setting for the year. And if there's something that the group recommends council tasks you with, then that's something that council can do.
So the recommendation is that for our next meeting, we have a discussion about the implications of the new bylaw in terms of our work plans and the implications of what should go on in the world. Thoughts
Sounds good.
and announcements. I have nothing.
Well, since you're talking about what could be on a future agenda, if we could discuss the proposed CDC changes that were brought up at that last meeting too, as far as CDC, Community Development Code
Oh, thank you.
changes. Darren, if you could,
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up under staff announcements.
so maybe if we could have a discussion on that in a future agenda too.
Aaron? Owen? Go ahead.
Yeah, so had on here also the council rules changes. So council did amend their rules. To align pretty closely with what the CCI recommended last month when Councilor Baumgartner was here. A couple of the highlights. First work session of the month will now be at 1 p.m. So they were traditionally both at 6 p.m. So one will be in the afternoon now. Agendas will be posted 6 days in advance. So moving forward, the CCI should start seeing the agenda on the Wednesday before the meeting. Let's see. The community comments went from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, except for a public hearing, remained at 5 minutes. And that's something the CCI discussed at the last meeting. And then, yeah, that was the highlights as far as.
Council said, yeah, the mayor was very appreciative of CCI giving the input. So
There wasn't a 60-hour minimum requirement for council, part of the rule change. Bad joke, sorry.
Yeah, and then the other thing I had was, let's see. Yep, so I mentioned the annual report, so we'll get that on the agenda next time. And what Shannon is referencing Some proposed code concepts were brought to council for a brief discussion at their last meeting. And some of them, they would, I guess they really don't address any kind of engagement. It's just cleaning up the code. And again, I can come
I
back.
think
and
it
brief them.
limits engagement to some
Sorry, say it again.
concern.
Okay, well, I can bring it back, but we're gonna go to the planning commission first and have a discussion with them. Yeah, I can bring it back and give you all a briefing. And then the last thing, Owen and Tanner, your terms are up at the end of this year. So if you want to re-up for another term, I suggest going to the city's website and filling out the application to get your application in.
I'll sign your paychecks, Owen.
I don't think I-
Perspective, Owen.
I'm
Do you
just
take
going,
it
I'm
on?
working way too much. I don't have the energy.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay.
Other
Yeah.
comments?
Where do you want me to, re-up with Kathy, right? She
Yeah,
emailed
so
me.
I can, Owen and Tanner, I'll send you the link to the application. So if you want to fill it out, send it in, you'll have it.
Okay. Comments for the good of the order.
I do appreciate your input as well, Owen, similar to Echo Bob's input there.
Thanks.
Right, it's 7:27. And
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
thank you, Owen.
Owen.
Night.